Here we are again, Gabby. How are you this morning?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Good. I didn't think this was going to be a trend for us. A lovely Saturday morning chat, but it's always lovely to see you on this wintry day in Denver. How's California?
It's a little overcast. We've had some rain, but it is not as cold as it is there.
No. So how do you feel? We're on like our third episode of At the Bedside, and I have to I have to concede, I'm a little surprised that this is going so well.
I'm not.
I know. I know. The past two episodes, we've gotten over probably 2,100 listens. I'm just blown away by the collaboration with you and getting to know you, but also just how the information that we're providing is so needed. Yeah, needed and important. So what are we doing today with this lovely third episode? And I have to admit, you pull at my heart a lot. I was a hospice coordinator, hospice program manager when I first started in Hospice. And I have a special place for people that we're getting ready to talk to today. Because they are just amazing human beings. And I think of my hospice volunteers back in Wilmington, North Carolina, that I still sometimes keep in touch with. So talk to me a little bit about why you feel that us talking about hospice volunteers, you call them the gentle whisperers beside the bed. Why is this important to you?
Oh boy. The volunteers they're unselfish, they're kind, they're compassionate, and they are volunteering to sit next to a person who is dying for no other reason but because it fills their heart and their soul is called to this in a way that I don't think people fully understand. And I have watched all of these that are here with us today. I have seen how they are at the bedside, and I I'm amazed by their generosity of heart and how kind and giving they are. And I wanted to have an opportunity to elevate them,
Oh,
to
wow.
raise the awareness a little bit, and to help families know that, especially if you're on hospice, the volunteer is a member of the hospice team, and they are there for the patient, they're there for the family, and the work they do it's just fills my heart. I reached out to some family members to ask them if they would maybe write something about how their volunteers have affected them. So if it's okay, can I read one?
Oh, I would love that.
Okay, this is from a woman who, young, in her late 40s. Her husband had a glioblastoma, and that in general is hard, right? She did not want to volunteer. She didn't want another person in her home, especially during COVID. And I just kept saying, please, you've got to believe me. The volunteers, they're magical and delicious and wonderful. And I just truly believe you're going to benefit from having them there. So this is what she wrote. I was not sure how it would feel to have a volunteer come at such a vulnerable state of life. I had a hard time imagining how they might be able to help, but was pleasantly surprised. I found that having a kind and curious new acquaintance sitting by to witness our truth and show interest in our past and present selves was valuable in and of itself. Trust came easily, and I found ways for our volunteer to help spiritually and practically. It made me want to volunteer in this capacity. And that is why we're doing this today.
Well, this is what I say. There's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer.
I concur.
I love it. So I know some of these people that we're getting ready to talk to for a while. Some of them have supported my Live Well, Die Well tour. And also, these individuals personally. So I would be honored if you would, let's do a round table. Let's bring these individuals to the forefront and let them introduce themselves. But I'm going to pass the torch to you, and let's get to know these individuals.
All right. I think what I'll start is I'll just say your name and maybe you can wave a bit. And then after they've seen your face and your name, then we're going to call on each of you to share a little bit about yourself. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So we'll start with Emily. Emily is a 17-year-old high school girl and she's amazing. Emily, you want to say hi?
Hello. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for having me here today.
High school. Man, you're beautiful. I mean, high school student volunteering for hospice. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Smith is an artist. He's an author of the book Meditate Yourself, and he is one of the most lovely, well, they're all lovely, but he gives presence a whole new meaning. Paul, can you say hello?
Hello, everyone, and yet thank you for inviting me. And I am nowhere near 17, approaching the other end of the scale. But yes, it's hospice has brought amazing beauty and benefits into my life. I'm very appreciative.
Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Too. Thank you.
Pam Heinrich McPherson is the author of Vigil, The Poetry of Presence, which is a powerfully beautiful book. Pam, can you say hello?
Yes, hello. I'm just delighted to be here. I so appreciate you asking me to be a part of this group. I'm looking forward to hearing what each of us share.
I have to tell everyone that Pam is my adoptive mom. Her son and I are really good friends, and I tell him that he's my younger brother all the time. And Pam, I have to even mention when I was going through Vermont with my Live Well, Die Well tour, man, being with your family was an amazing part of that tour, and I'm really glad to see you.
Thank you. I'm here representing the East Coast.
Thank you so much.
All right, Lourdes is lovely and beautiful and wonderful. She is a hospice volunteer. She's a masseuse who provides massage to our hospice patients. Lourdes, you want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Lourdes, and when you asked me to join you, I'm just surprised how life has led me to doing this that has fulfilled my life. It gives me purpose, and in a way, it was by accident that I ended up here, and it was just beautiful.
We're really
you're beautiful.
Thank you.
We have Philip. Philip, and this is what I wrote as his intro. Philip brings his whole heart and has a very gentle, loving soul. Philip, can you say hello?
Hello, everybody. What an honor to be with you. And I'm such a fortunate person to be among such a diverse group of volunteer and staff at the Mission Hospice.
Thank you. And we have Craig Schroeder, who is the hospice volunteer for the company that I work for and for most of the volunteers here. Craig, can you say hello?
Good day, everybody. I am Director of Volunteer Services, and it is, I would say, one of the most humbling and rewarding things I have ever done in my entire life. And I have the privilege to work with a lot of beautiful hearts, including everybody on this screen.
Oh man, I'm right there with you, because when I was a coordinator, man, I received so much more than I actually did or gave. I'm sure you can concur.
So this is our guest today, and then we're going to ask each of you this question. The question is, what prompted you to think about becoming a hospice volunteer, and how has this work changed you, or perhaps changed the way you view life and death? And you can interpret that however you want and answer it in your own way. but that's sort of the premise of this question that we'd like to ask all of you. Did you want to add anything to that, Kimberly?
No, is that what I love about us, Gabby, is that it really isn't about us, and we love to hand over and really give it to our guest. And I really encourage every one of our guests today is I want people to be inspired to work with hospice patients, as well as get to know what hospice is about. So yeah, I'm excited to hear some of these stories.
I just want to give them the floor, Kimberly.
Let's do it.
Right? This isn't about us.
Never.
All right, let's do this. You guys ready? Okay, Emily.
Yes.
Emily, we are starting with you.
Great. So as I said before, I'm a high school senior, so I don't have very much life experience. I started when I was 15, and that was because I started as an activities volunteer at a different facility, where there was something missing that Mission Hospice later showed me could be provided at end of life, and that was love. When I was working there, a lot of the residents would confess to me that they were lonely, and that their family members wouldn't visit as often as they'd like. And one woman especially, I remember, confided in me, and she said, "I just want to die. Please, please, God, just let me die." And that rattled me, because as a 15-year-old, I hadn't really thought of that yet. I mean, as a 17-year-old, I still don't really quite understand the gravity of what she had said. And so that kind of began a journey of internal turmoil, I would say, where I was just reaching, wondering what I could have said to her that would have brought her the comfort that she needed. And, I looked it up. There's no WikiHow on what to say. There was no clear-cut response. And so as I was searching online for resources, I came across Mission Hospice, and particularly their No One Dies Alone program. And that really was what attracted me to hospice work in the first place. And so after the volunteer training, I became a direct care volunteer first. And through that too, I started to explore life, death, and the human condition as a whole, and was really acclimating myself to this new climate, where death was kind of an everyday reality. And it was something new that I hadn't thought of very much before. And especially as someone who wasn't raised religiously, I was very much metaphysically blind in that sense, where I couldn't connect at first with patients on the sort of spiritual, soulful level that everyone else could. And so as I continued to work with new patients and really hear their stories, I began to explore that side of myself and that side of the world. And I think that's one of the bigger things I've learned from hospice, is that there's this whole new way of living and being out there that I wasn't in tune with before. And through that, I can really connect with patients and their families, and even other volunteers and the nurses. And I think I've found my niche now in this hospice community, where because of my age, patients don't tend to confide in me, their deepest concerns or fears, but instead I find that I come to hospice to kind of bring the life, life that's already there, of course, but I come and I try to bring smiles to patients' faces, and that brings a smile to my face. And I think this is a quote directly from Gabby's blog, but after I held my first vigil, after a year of being a direct care volunteer, I knew that, quote, "This is exactly what I need to be, and I'm here doing exactly what I need to be doing." And so that quote is very close to my heart, because that's truly how I feel about hospice. This is where I belong, and I am so, so thankful that I was able to volunteer and that Craig let me in so early in my life, and that I'm sure that these experiences will continue with me forever, and I will be a hospice volunteer for the rest of my life. So thank you.
Are you sure you're 17? Because wow, the wisdom. Oh, wow. I wish that at 17, I had been exposed to something like this. Thank you so much for sharing. Wow, that blew me away.
Oh, Emily, you do bring smiles to people's faces, all of the people's faces. Thank you. That was
Kimberly, can I just add something really quick to what Emily, to Emily? Emily was our first volunteer under the age of 18 and a high school student. And it was remarkable because I really felt we needed to get young people in. And when she came to me, I was uncertain. And I said, I need the right first one. And she was absolutely perfect in what she presented to me. And I knew she would just grow exponentially as soon as she came in. She wants to go to med school, and hopefully she will end up being a palliative care hospice doctor and care for me when it's my turn, if I make it to hospice, because she is that wonderful. Thank you.
That's amazing.
all right, Paul, we're giving you the floor. You have to put your unmute. Paul, you're muted. Paul? Kimberly, are you able to unmute him? Oh boy. Oh, it looks like he lost us. Okay, you guys, we're going to move on. And Pam, would you take the floor and we'll log him back in?
Sure. Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to start with a poem from my book. It's called Soul Gifts. The gift of time, of silence, the practice of presence, listening, giving dignity, respect, and compassion to each dying person as we sit alone, sharing sacred passing moments. Gentle touch, soft reassurance are my small gifts to give as I bear witness, as I am being with. Gifts from the soul, time, and presence. Wanted to read that first because I feel like that sort of sets the scene for the meaning that being connected with hospice, and in particular my volunteering now is mainly focused on sitting vigil in the last days or hours of life with people who are dying. My own journey began, I think there were seeds planted by my grandmother, who was a funeral director, an undertaker, who had to take over the business of her husband when he died, when they had very young children. And this was back in the mid 1920s. And it actually wasn't even a business that women were supposed to be in, so that she had to have a front man, one of her brother-in-laws, appear to run the business. But I was very close to her, and I think there were seeds planted in me in my relationship with her that brought this interest to me. I've been a hospice volunteer for over 35 years, and actually, a number of those years I was a volunteer coordinator here. I'm in the Burlington, Vermont area. And when I came to hospice volunteering, as is often the case in many people's stories, it was because an aunt of mine, I had been curious about it in its earliest days when the roots were being established for this form of care, but had been involved with bringing up a family. And it was in 1985 when a very dear aunt of mine died. And I think that's a very common story for how people come to hospice. Often it's because of an experience that they had that was close to it. I was a volunteer coordinator for 16 years with the local hospice program here. And it was my opportunity to grow in a way that I couldn't have anticipated. The work was so meaningful. The richness and fullness of my own life took on new meaning because of the work I was doing. But I'm really here because I am a volunteer, and I've been mainly a Vigil volunteer since 2004, when I retired from the coordinating position. So I'm on call, just to tell you a little bit of what that's like. I'm on call, as are many other volunteers. There are a core of volunteers that do this specifically for short-term needs when people are dying. And when I receive a call or an email just saying that there is a request for someone, volunteers to sit with someone who's dying, it might be to relieve family members so that they can take a break. It might be because there is no family. There are a host of reasons why it might happen. For me personally, it's a moment to just leave life as I know it on an everyday basis and enter a world where, for me personally, there's deep meaning, where I am stilled by the experience and the opportunity to bear witness to the dying process of someone else. It's completely about being. It's not about doing. And in our busy lives, it's very easy to be a doing instead of a being human. But I think that's one of the beautiful things that this volunteer experience holds for me, is the opportunity to simply be fully present to what I'm experiencing. I think I'll stop there, and I'm happy to chat more as we go along, and perhaps share another poem.
I love that. And I love that so much. Thanks, Pam, for sharing. It's amazing to, I forgot that you were a hospice coordinator too. And that's amazing that we have that in common as well. Who's next, Gab?
Oh, Pam, that was so beautiful. I look forward to another poem. So definitely, please share. All right, I think we will ask Philip to join the floor.
Thank you, Gabby. Once again, how wonderful it is to be with you. And I'm one of the volunteers that I learned so much from them, each one of them, especially Emily. She's the youngest, but I learned so much from you, Emily, and I'm very impressed for what you do. And you always been a great model for me every time I see you or I hear you or I hear what you do for others. I wished I was doing or know a little bit of what you know when I was your age. What really touched me about the Mission Hospice, where I saw life is wonderful, life is a treasure, and human being is just meaning. It's the meaning of, they know the meaning of being people or patient that need emotional support, and their family need friendship and support. I've been through 2 tough experiences myself. The result of this 2 tough experience helped me to find a way to the hospice and to practice what I've been through me personally, taking care of my parents, losing my parents, and then feeling I have not done enough for my parents. And I just want to extend that care to anybody that I meet that need that care, which is, I find it at Mission Hospice, which is great for me personally, not to stay with, call it guilt feeling. No, there is opportunity now to extend and to keep on practicing. And the other part of my experience, being a patient myself, in March 2016, I became disabled. And where is my life turned around, and I can say part of me died. And that part of me learned how to experience the emotional and the physical suffering. And that's also, I thought, where can I practice that? How, that's a great way I know how others feel going through physical and emotional suffering. And talking to a wonderful friend of mine, while I was in the hospital, which I end up between hospital and nursing facility for almost 2 years, hard to believe. I'm glad I'm not there. And my wonderful friend did some research and she said, Philip, I find you a place where as soon as you graduate and you leave the nursing facility, that's where you should start and you put your feet in. And she contacted Craig. She put an application for me, and she is again one of the wonderful friends that I'm very fortunate to know. And as soon as I left the nursing facility and I did my training with Craig, group of 18, which I was like, wow. And I did share with them a lot of what I've been through. And it was like, I'm going there to support. I find myself being supported by the group. And I still being supported by that wonderful group. And I really appreciate that. And I don't go there to be supported, but it just happened because I feel like it's a part of a family. It's a part of special people. We have the bond, again, from the youngest to the oldest, and it is just such a diverse group, different accent, different nationality, different ages, different professions. It's just amazing. And being there alongside someone that I can relate to what is emotional suffering is, what's emotional pain is, and it gives me really special connection that I can relate to once like ongoing thing. It's much more than beyond rewarding. I don't have enough words to express it. Every time I leave the Mission Hospice, I want to go back again, even though it's COVID going on, but I'm still, every day I think about it. Every Monday, I'm still cannot wait for things to clear up and just to go back. And I consider it an honor to support a patient or a family, or to sit beside a person who is living this life and to share that event, especially when there are no family or friends at the bedside, and to let this person know you are not alone. And that's what I want to be there for. Thank you for allowing me to share this, and I look forward to continue on the journey to be part of the team.
Philip, you are a beautiful soul. You are a beautiful soul. And you know, I have to admit, going through what you sounds like you've been through, I don't know how you were inspired to help other people, but wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I feel like you're my teacher this morning. So thank you. Thank you for that. Totally. All right, Gab, who's next on our list?
Do you feel like like your heart is just like tingling right now?
I mean, I'm not a crier, but my little eyes are watering up, and I'm so moved by Pam's story and Philip's story and Emily's story, and we still have 2 more to go. And it makes me feel like, have I done enough at the bedside? And they're inspiring me to even question that. When I go to bed at night, I ask my higher power, have I done enough? Because I want to make sure I have. And I feel like there's always room for more. And man, these volunteers, they're teaching me a lot this morning. So thanks. Who's next?
So I think we'll give Paul another try. Paul, you ready? Unmute yourself and share with the world why it is that you are a hospice volunteer.
Yeah, thank you. Am I in? Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes.
For better or for worse, can you see me? Well, sorry about that. Everything just went haywire. Such is life. So why did I become a volunteer? Look, it's going back a bit now, in a different time in a different country. But I describe myself as being a seeker, someone who lives kind of on the edge of the known and the unknown, always asking those deep questions. What am I doing here? How did I get here? What happens when we die? And I bumped into an old friend whilst traveling around my home country of England. And we caught up a bit, and I said, Miranda was her name. Well, what are you doing these days? And, a bit of chit and a bit of chat, this and that. And she said, oh, I'm volunteering in hospice care. I said, oh, what's that? Tell me a little more. And she did, and I just immediately knew that it was for me. Yes, the mystery of death. I mean, especially in English culture, death is kind of taboo. It happens, but we don't participate in it or see it. I just knew I had to be there and wanted to be there. No, it wasn't like that following day made efforts to become involved. It was years later, and in fact, in another country, in this beautiful land of America. And the way that it came about was really a bit of serendipity. I was living in an apartment here in San Mateo, and I'd gone down to the parking lot, and there was a chappie on a bicycle cycling around there, looking a bit lost, and we got chatting. It turned out that this person was volunteering for Mission Hospice. And he was completely lost and in the wrong place. But he extended an invitation to me to be a hospice volunteer, which was crazy. We only had a few minutes conversation, and somehow the connection was there, and he felt so moved to ask me. And I thought, okay, things are coming together now. This is the right time. And I approached Mission Hospice. It was still a little while after, but that for me was the call, the universe calling me to follow the prompts of what I felt was completely natural for me to be a part of. And so I went through the process and got involved with Mission Hospice. And that was quite a few years ago now. And I didn't know what to expect. I just knew I needed to be there. But from the very first experience, this was Paul. I can mention his name. It was 16 years ago now. I discovered just the everyday heroes, what goes on behind closed doors, and the fear and the process that we go through as we're faced with end of life. We're so attached to life, and we know we're going to die, and we assume it's going to be way off in the future at some point. But when you're actually facing it, it's a whole different thing. What I discovered with Paul was a person who, he was in his 70s, but as a young man, he'd lost his arm in a motorbike accident. He was right-handed and he lost his right arm. And what do you think he did for a profession? He became an architect. What an incredible person. He retrained himself with one arm to be a drawing expert. And he was a swimmer. That was his favorite pastime. So these sort of stories, these people that you meet in everyday life who you would never ordinarily meet. The next person I came to visit was Maxine. She opened the door. I was still new in hospice. The first thing she said to me was, "I'm so afraid to die." I went, oh. Inside, I thought, okay, this is what I came for. This is why I'm involved in this area of life. We sat together. She cried. She shared her feelings of just being so afraid. And I said, well, let's look at this together. Let's see what does this mean? What does death mean? We don't exactly know. It's a step into the unknown, no matter how convinced you are of whatever faith you may or may not have. It's a step into the unknown, and we just don't like that. We're uncomfortable with it. We like certainty. Well, there is no certainty in life, only a certainty that we will die, and that we don't actually know what's on the other side of that. And I felt, I grew to realize I had a natural ability to be comfortable with that unknowing and to bring comfort to those who are facing that possibility. I only quite recently, 2 or 3 years ago, had my own health experience where I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was absolutely amazed at how I felt so attached to life, how it affected me in that here's one who felt I'd completely come to terms with life and death. And yet when it was possibly my turn, I thought, oh, I'm not ready. And most of us are not ready. We are instinctively, we hang on to life. We're programmed to hang on to life. And letting go is not easy. It doesn't come natural. And I had to go through a process of accepting, well, I have somebody that potentially could cause my death. And I got to feel up close and personal what the people that I visit with in hospice care go through. And most of us, are just not ready. It came as a surprise, invariably, and they find themselves in the hospice house. I do all my service in the hospice house, which is like the IC of hospice care. It's an incredible place. It's a happy place. It's a soulful place. It's a peaceful place. And it's a place that I love to be. I'm there so frequently. I'm fortunate to be there. And the relationships that we have are many and varied. The unique thing about approaching end of life is we've lost all of our social front. There's just a human, soulful connection. We're meeting with people who perhaps at other times in our life, we wouldn't have that much to say to each other because we're all involved in our own important life and the fronts that most of us have, including me. But in the hospice environment and the end of life environment, none of that matters. You soon realize it's all man-made. And it's a cloak we discard. And so we connect on a really human level at the most fundamental emotional place that that we find ourselves in, which is just the organic, raw nature of life and the possibility, the likelihood, the inevitability that our life is ending. And those relationships, they're brief, days, sometimes weeks, rarely months, but they're unique, beautiful heart connections. And I just feel so, so thankful and so privileged that I found myself in Mission Hospice, that Mission Hospice have accepted me and trust me to engage in these beautiful, life-changing relationships. So many life-changing experiences that I wouldn't know where to begin to, or which one to choose.
Oh,
That's
That's
probably good
amazing.
for now.
thank you,
you.
Paul.
You know, I just to add, one of the greatest lessons the dying have taught me is they changed how I look at time. You know, and how I measure time. We tend to measure it in length, but the dying taught me how to measure it in depth, because people come into our lives for a very brief time and radically change the direction that we go in. And Paul, wow, that's amazing. With your own diagnosis
I should probably add to that. Sorry, I left you hanging there. In my case, I made a few changes and was really fortunate that next time I went for the checkup, there was no sign of the cancer. So for me, the universe gave me this incredible lesson that put me in the place of the person in the bed, usually who I'm visiting. I got to really feel what we experience in that.
Wow.
So here we go, a day at a time, but everything's good.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. Gabby, we have one more amazing person to introduce.
Well, we have one more volunteer, and then you and Craig get to have a little chat. Paul, thank you. You know how I feel about you.
Likewise.
That was lovely. Thank you. So, Lourdes, oh my goodness, my heart smiles just saying your name. And that is all I'm going to say. Lourdes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I became a volunteer because I wanted the opportunity to practice massage. I'm a massage therapist. And I had no idea what I was coming into, and I am just so grateful I found what I feel it was meant for me. Being a massage therapist in hospice is such a gift because I see patients that ask for something. It is like giving them, pleasing them, giving them something they have control of, and touching them and just seeing in their faces relief sometimes. And just when they look at me and they smile, that it just melts my heart. And being at Mission Hospice it's such a gift from heaven. In a different way than I think most of us have felt it, but it's such a spiritual and sacred experience to be with them. A few months ago at the mission house, I massaged this woman, and it was the last time I saw her. But the massage session became, I guess the only way I can say it's spiritual, because I could feel something between my hand and her body. It's like this energy. It was just something such a gift, so special, that when I finished the session, she opened her eyes and she said, "It was special. Thank you." And I said it was special for me too. So it's just I don't know, doing this has opened my mind and it has opened my heart. And it's teaching me how to live. And I'm just very grateful to Mission Hospice and also to Craig, because he seems to have the talent to assign the right volunteer for the right person. So thank you, Craig. And I'm just very lucky, very fortunate. Thank you.
Wow. It's something about human touch, isn't it? And you have a gift. You really do. That's amazing. An amazing story. Especially, I think, if one of the lessons that I've learned over the last year and a few months, man, I miss touch so bad.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm not a big vaccine person, but I got my first dose and getting my second one because I want to be touched and I want to hug people again. So I want to do my part, for sure. So Craig, you and I, it's been, at first the stories have changed me today. And it does take this huge coordination to train volunteers, and it's crazy how I fell into being a volunteer program manager, and I know what it takes to work with volunteers. But Craig, the one thing I want, before we get into what is it you do and how do you become a volunteer, is when people hear people volunteering at the bedside of a hospice patient, they're like, how do you do that? Isn't that scary? Aren't you afraid? And I would love for you to share some of your experience when it comes to being a volunteer coordinator. And what are some of your volunteers? Because I know you've heard that too. What's the pre and what's the post after they do some of this work? So take it away.
Okay, I'll take it. I just want to start off to follow what Pam did. I just need to read a quick poem because I really think it is the essence of many of our volunteers. And we have a very robust program at Mission Hospice. We have 173 volunteers. And since the pandemic, I had 74 inquiries about our training coming up in April. And how do you refuse people that have the heart and the curiosity and the will to sit bedside with people that are dying? It's one of the challenges of my job, Grace. So it's just showing what this pandemic has done to people. But I do wish to read this poem, then I'll speak a little bit to what it is.
Yeah, please.
This is called Beautiful People, and it's by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. It's short. Most beautiful people have known, the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. And I really feel a lot of our volunteers, as said earlier by, I believe, Pam, or it might have been you, Kimberly, that most people come do this work because they've had loss in their life. Just a little bit of background on me is when I was a freshman in high school, all of 13, a grade school friend of mine died rock climbing in Yosemite, fell 175 feet. Fast forward another 3.5 years, I had a girlfriend who I cared about deeply that committed suicide out of the blue. At this time, my parents were not equipped to deal with it. They're very traditional, old school type people. They left me to my own designs. In my 20s, I lost 5 people to the AIDS epidemic. I lost my grandmother, who I was very close to in the early 2000s. Then my father to cancer, my best friend, my mother, and in the last 2 months, I have lost my dear, dear sister-in-law, who was a sister to me suddenly, and then her ex-husband, who died of cancer. Through all these experiences, it's all different. And to have volunteers to be with people during these times to share with. I have 173 people I can share my experiences with and who do reach out to me. And I find it quite touching. As you might see, I have a turtle. I tend to pull into my shell sometimes. And when people reach out, I will come out and express that. And I really feel that's what volunteers do, is they provide an opportunity of presence. And what does that presence do? They are just there to experience what the patient and what the family need for the moment, be it at the mission house or you're visiting at a care facility or in somebody's home. Our volunteers have these beautiful hearts and have been taught presence to come into these situations and just let the patient guide what really needs to happen. And it really is about being and witnessing and observing. And that's really what we teach to in our training, is to do that, is to be that sort of person in a situation, because when people are dying and their process starts speeding up, what you see this week may be different next week. So you always come in with an open heart, as it said, soft front, strong back. And it provides those opportunities for the explorations, like what Paul said. It's just amazing. He knocked on a door and there's a woman, first thing out of her mouth is, "I'm afraid of dying." And Paul had the presence to say, let's explore this together, because it's coming from a place of not knowing. It comes from a place of not knowing, of exploration with this person, to explore with them, let them be the guide. And from that guidance, we learn, my volunteers learn so much. It is the most humbling and beautiful job I've ever had. It is a job with purpose and intent. And yes, of course, there's the administrative end of it, which is the nuts and bolts of business and what we need to do to get done. But every day, I know I am kind of at the back of the lines, supporting this beautiful body of volunteers, to hold them up, to cheer them on, and to listen to them and support them so they can be their individual self and bring their uniqueness to that situation in order to support patients and families.
That's amazing. But you know, a lot of people don't call and say, "Hey, I want to be a hospice volunteer," and then suddenly, here's a patient, go do it. Good luck. You know, there's this whole in-depth and this intense training. Let's talk a little bit about when someone is interested. And I know in my past, when you're touched by hospice, you want to give back. And we had this, not a rule, but this philosophy, like, go through your 13 months and then come and be a volunteer with us if that so fits. But talk to me about what you do to prepare people to open that door to this world of being at the bedside of people that are going to change their lives.
First of all, I have the philosophy is, before I came in the hospice in 2012 as a volunteer, changing my life after my father died, I was curious. So I became a volunteer. I was studying. I wanted to be a trauma nurse. And it's amazing what happens when you step into this world. I did not become a trauma nurse, didn't go to nursing school. I've never looked back at what I did. And I kind of use that experience when I look at people. They're coming here because they're looking for something deeper. And they may not know what that is, and I don't know what that is. So it just starts with the interview process. It's not a hard sale. They have to come to me. I send an email back out saying, you know, here's our application, here's a training schedule, this is a bit about us. They come back to me, set up an interview, and the interview isn't a interview like a business interview. It's more of a meet and greet, open-ended questions. I want to find out who these people are and what brings them here. What's their spark? What's their interests? What are their strengths? And what are their weaknesses too? And then from there, when they're accepted, I think everybody here could attest to this, the training that we do have in the ongoing training is what we try and get them to do is explore themselves in the training. Yes, there are HIPAA regulation don'ts and certain things that volunteers need to do, but it's more the basis. Frank Ostaszewski and the 5 invitations is a very big part of our training. And so we use the 5 precepts and read them through the training so people have that understanding of what they do. And to have them realize this is an exploration of themselves as well as with the patient. And since pandemic, we are doing our trainings online through Zoom, which I don't prefer as much because I want to build a community. We have a community of volunteers and you have to be face to face. And we go through training exercises with volunteers going deep and going intimate because you have to experience that somewhat before you go to the bedside. Our training is 26 hours. Most of it is interactive and experiential. We do not do any of our modules online. So to me, you're not building community if you're doing things online. I have my staff speak to all our volunteers. If it's bereavement, my bereavement counselor comes in. Same with spiritual care. Spiritual care counselors come in, medical director. It gives the volunteer a deeper feeling and sense of what is going on. And 26 hours isn't nearly enough. I do know Zen Hospice in San Francisco, they're 48 hours. I don't know if I could get enough volunteers if I had a 48-hour training, but it's like anything. We could sit on the mountain and in the cave and listen to our guru forever, but you actually got to go out and experience it to really have that sink in. And that's where the training really begins, is when these volunteers go out and start seeing patients.
And, you know, to also emphasize that, you know, Medicare is a huge requirement when it comes to the Medicare hospice benefit. They really mandate and they want hospice to always remain a community-based affair. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, the expectations of what that means for the volunteers and why does Medicare, in your opinion, you know, demand this?
Well, I think it goes back to when hospice was coming back into our world in the 70s. It was all volunteers. It was volunteer nurses, doctors, home health aides, chaplains. At the time it was chaplains. Now we have spiritual care counselors. And in 1983, when finally there is enough people to convince Congress of hospice is saving Medicare hundreds of millions of dollars back in 83, that was a lot of money, by keeping people at home and not dying in the hospital and going to the emergency room. The care at home is something. So through them working out the hospice benefit through Medicare, through Congress, they said, we got to keep this volunteer piece in, because at that time, hospices were just community-based volunteers. So the mandate is out of all the clinical billable hours, 5% of that has to be the hospice volunteer hours. Sadly, hospice has gone to the direction of for profit. That's a whole nother talk. And to me, it's very unconscionable to profit off death in this method. I think community-based hospice is the only place a volunteer or a family should go to. There's more to offer with that. Fast forward, even during the pandemic, Medicare relaxed that 5% rule because of COVID and people not being able to visit. We normally run about 14 to 15% of our volunteer hours compared to clinical hours. 15% of all hours are volunteer hours. That's just
That's
a dedication.
impressive. That's really impressive.
I am so happy. It's only 8% now, which I'm kind of like feeling bad about. I was like, what am I
In
doing?
COVID, man, that is like a home run, and everybody on base, whatever they call that. But yeah, that's just amazing that you have still this huge high volume of volunteers.
I would say, Kimberly, it's volunteers. I am very lucky that I have all these heart-centered people that really make my job look good. And it is the dedication and the will. You listen to, Emily or Paul or Philip or Lourdes, very different areas, but you hear the dedication and the love they have for the work that they do. And I kind of pinch myself sometimes to be surrounded by all these people. This is my job. I'm surrounded by people like this. I've been in sales in the restaurant world, and it is a totally different feeling. And I am blessed because it's the volunteers who bring that.
That's awesome. I don't know how Gabby and I did this, but we're getting listeners and viewers from all over the country and the world. But if someone's interested in volunteering with hospice, what are some of your recommendations?
My recommendations first will be, if all your viewers of this are out there, really try and look for a community-based nonprofit hospice. Try and support that. There is more in a community-based hospice that's going to give back to their patients, because they're not looking at a profit line. They're looking at what is the center of this. You always have to balance patient care with being viable and staying afloat, but you're not valuing patient care to profit, which is a whole different place to look at. So that's my first thing. Research their website, look at what they have to say, see if there's any statements by volunteers that are there and how they are treated and what goes on, and come in with an open heart and curiosity and ask as many questions as possible when you come in, and make sure you get a good interview and ask a lot of questions in that interview. I really appreciate people who come in, they ask a lot of questions of what's this like, what's going on, what do your volunteers feel?
I love it. I love it. And Gab, I think thank you, Craig. What you do, man, I know the ins and outs behind the scenes of what it takes to be a volunteer coordinator. You're a gift to your organization. And in return, you are blessed to work with some of these amazing community members on a daily, weekly basis, and who are at the bedside of individuals facing end of life. Man, you've got the best job, that's for sure. I don't even know if I should call it a job, because when you love what you do, it's totally not a job, for sure. But Gab, I know we wanted to ask some of these wonderful volunteers to share a little bit of a personal story. And so, which is, I think, inspires me to want to volunteer at the bedside. So take it away.
Gosh, my heart is so full right now. And I feel emotional, but it's physically emotional. Like gosh, thank you all so much for the work that you do, for being here today, for being so you and so lovely. I'm so filled with gratitude that we get to walk amongst you. Like, I feel lucky. I feel truly lucky. So yeah, I thought maybe we would start, and Emily, I'm sort of picking on you because you are so young, but that inspires me. And my thought is that your stories would inspire others in your age group as well. And I look forward to that. So Emily, I know you don't have a lot of years of experience, but would you be willing to share a story with us? One that just really has touched you deeply. I know there's probably a million, but maybe share a story with us.
Yeah, so I have two big patients that come to mind. And the experiences I had with them were both very hard for two very different reasons. The first was a woman who was fully prepared to die. And the second was of a woman who was not prepared at all. And so the patient who wasn't prepared yet, I had been sitting with her. She was notedly demanding and anxious, and she had many things that were left undone and unsaid, I think. And she asked me one day, what's going to happen? You know, I'm scared, I'm anxious, what's going to happen? And I said, it'll be okay. And she gave me this look and she was like, how do you know that? And that stopped me in my tracks. I didn't know that. I didn't know what to say. And for a while, this became something that was difficult for me to bring up in conversations. I didn't want to broach the subject because I was afraid of saying something wrong, because I didn't have the years of experience that other people have had. And in that sense, during that time, my age was becoming almost a weakness in my eyes rather than a strength. And so this was one of the harder experiences I had to go through as a hospice volunteer. But now that I've had nearly 2 years at the job, it's become less elephant in the room-ish. And I think Paul mentioned how taboo it can be. And I've really worked, I think, every shift trying to become more comfortable with this idea of the unknown. And now I have learned better what to say. And so when the other patient came, when the one who was fully prepared to go, we had some amazing conversations. She had chosen the End of Life Option Act, right? And so she was fully prepared to go on her own terms. She told me, I've done everything there is to do on this earth, and that whatever is left for her lies beyond. And while that was incredibly wonderful to hear, it was also difficult to reconcile with, because it's hard to kind of correlate or to reconcile the innate urge to survive with the fact that some people are ready to let that go. And while I fully supported her decision, that was also really difficult. And I think through these stories with these people that I meet, I'm learning each step of the way what death really means and how different it can be to different people. And they all inspired me so much to, take a look within and question your own mortality and come to terms with it, and do that, come to appreciate life for the beauty that it is. So that's my story.
Wow.
Holy cow. Oh, wow. You're so young and so wise. And if I have anything to say, wow, the dying are teaching you really, really how to live well.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thanks, Emily.
Oh, Emily, that was lovely. We are definitely kind of cutting it short here. So I wish we could ask all of you, but I thought what do you think about this, Kimberly, that maybe we have Pam share one of her poems. And since she does have so much experience in vigiling, maybe she could share a vigiling story.
Oh, I would love that. And we might need to even explain what a visual is, because for those who are out there, that's might be a new term for them. So yeah, I would love for Pam to read another one of her poems.
Sorry, I'd love to. Thank you for asking. I'm just so completely absorbed in what everyone else is saying. I just feel like I'm sitting right next to you and listening to you with such an open heart. And I'm so moved by all that you're sharing and by the passion that you feel. It's so obvious. this might be a poem that could bring people in the audience to the bedside with me, to have a sense of what it's like sitting at the bedside. Because when Kimberly asked, I'll start with what Vigil is about. Vigil sitting by hospice volunteers is a request to come in and be present to someone who's usually within the last 48 hours of life. It might be sooner than that. It might be a little bit more, but it's usually within the last couple of days of life. And I've done this both in the hospital with the No One Dies Alone program, as well as with our local hospice program at our local respite house, where people and their families can be while they're dying, or in people's homes. This particular poem, it takes place in the hospital. Come with me. The title is Birth Love. Flashing through the windows, passing car light beams glisten on the rain-slick street, a reminder of life as usual, while one small, frail woman sleeps the gentle sleep of a morphine drip. A motionless body winding down, her corporal mechanisms out, overworked, worn out, challenged by alcohol to the point of failure. 55 mortal years closing in, preparing to release a spirit for whom I sense life was not fair. May she have felt loved. May some of her wishes have come true. May she have laughed heartily and been embraced when overcome with sadness and tears. In this moment, I will hold her parents' love for her on the day she was born, returning it to her through my compassionate presence as I witness her final hours and moments in this universe that is all that we know. The circumstances and situations in which we might be sitting vigil are often mostly unknown to us when we arrive, and we are willing to open our hearts and just be fully present to whatever we find when we receive a vigil assignment. You know, all of us in hospice accept dying as a normal, organic process. And I think that's a starting point. I imagine Craig would agree with me in being drawn to hospice and being comfortable with being with people who are dying. And, you know, as Ram Dass has said so importantly, are we not each walking each other home? Is that not what life is about? And when we feel that, our life has a meaning that that carries us forward. Just trying to think what else I'd want to say about that. Oh, I would just mention another brief experience that I had. I was just with this woman one night. She was an elder and very tiny and frail. She was in the hospital and had a very loving daughter. It was very evident in her absence, even though she was there much of the time, because the board in the woman's room had written on it what the nickname was of this elder that she liked to be called. And there were little battery operated vigil lights, candle lights in the room that we could turn on and just be present to her. There was a beautiful shawl on the side of her bed that was hers. They were all things that I could take in and make my own assumptions about the quality of the presence around this woman as she was dying. And I was there, as I often am, like from 9 until midnight or so. Volunteers at Sit Vigil usually do this for a matter of a few hours, and often tag team then with another volunteer. And the midnight hour was dawning, pardon the contrast there. And I was preparing to leave when, and she had been unresponsive. I had sat close to her bed. I had put my hand on her hand. I had spoken to her in a soft voice during the time I was there. I was preparing to leave, and just as I was getting up to get my coat and get ready, 3 or 4 of the nurses came in. It was just midnight, and they sang happy birthday in a very soft, gentle way, because it was this woman's 100th birthday, which I hadn't realized. It was just this amazing, amazing moment. And they sang to her and touched her, and then they left the room. So I was just so glad that I was there for that moment with her.
Oh, wow. Ah, man. That's such a cool story. And so Gab, I don't want to be remiss. 2 of our guests here have books, and I would love for you to show those books, and maybe we can get Paul and Pam to tell us how, if individuals want to find those books, where to find them.
So we'll start with Pam because she's currently speaking with us. This is her book, which is beautiful. The Vigil, it's called Vigil, The Poetry of Presence. I love it. It's beautiful. In fact, I took one of her, with her permission, I have one of her poems in one of my books.
It's a great book. And Pam, you do the majority of these poems at the bedside when you set Vigil, correct?
The poems are all from my Vigil sitting experiences. They're my processing of the experiences that I'm having there. They're kind of how I take care of myself, and is with pen and paper to kind of release things that I'm holding in the experience, or usually following the experience. And they're unedited. They're completely, they're from my journal. I never had any intention of publishing, but two friends that are involved in end-of-life care with me learned about them, wanted to hear some, and really urged me to publish. So I published them 6 years ago. And the book is available from me directly, or on Amazon. People can find it there. So it's Vigil, The Poetry of Presence. And
I have one on my bookshelf.
I'm sorry?
I said I have one on my bookshelf.
Good girl.
I think you signed it for me when I was in Vermont, perhaps, but it's a fabulous, fabulous book. And I do feel like that book should be part of hospice volunteer training nationally. It just is very touching and very lovely. Gabby, what about Paul's book? Let's take a look at his gem. So, Meditate Yourself.
Meditate Yourself. You are your own guru. And well, this is great. It's a great book. I've read it. I follow it. I'm learning from it. I learn from Paul all the time. Paul, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Am I unmuted? All right.
Yes.
I never know. Yeah,
I love it.
there it is. It only took 15 years to produce, but it's a result of being a lifelong daily meditator. Started in my mid-teens, and here I am moving right along many, many decades later. And yeah, I've developed a method that I call just the 3 keys to a new perspective, where you can easily, consistently, and predictably find that place within that I call the inner sweet spot. Like there's the Goldilocks zone of meditation, through breathing and relaxation, get us to the door, and that's the entrance into that mystical inner meditative experience that we all have, just on the other side of closed eyes. It's all there 24/7.
Where can people get the book?
Oh, Amazon, where else?
Well,
Or
I'm gonna
to
have to
my-
order one. I want to send you some money so you can sign it. I've made an agreement with myself that I only keep signed copies of books because I am a book hoarder.
I'd
So
love to.
awesome. I'll be in touch with you.
Send me, you can contact me through my website, which is called meditateyourself.com.
I
and
will
I'd be
absolutely do
happy to.
that.
Thank you.
Well, Gab, I can't tell you what an amazing morning this is. I have to say thanks, Paul, Pam, Emily, Lourdes, and Craig and Phil, not least at all, sharing the impact of stories that brought you to hospice and volunteering. And wow, I hope that we have inspired people to look into opening their hearts and minds to becoming a hospice volunteer. And guys, you must agree with me, I hope, but man, you get so much more than you give, don't you? It just is amazing how much you go into a situation that you're thinking you're going to be the one giving and listening, and you walk away feeling just your cup has been so full. Gab, do you have any last words?
I have so many words.
I know you do. That's why I love you.
I think if anything comes out of this, it's that when that moment comes and you are being, having to be prepared to say goodbye to someone you love, and you are on a hospice and you are given this team and they say to you, would you like to have a volunteer come? Say yes. And that volunteer might play music. That volunteer might sing songs. That volunteer
Rub your shoulders.
Might play.
Touch me. Yeah.
There's a million
Yeah.
things that they might do for you, but most of all, they will be present at that bedside for you and for the person you love. And you won't be doing this alone. And they will take your hand in theirs, and they're just a gentle whisper at the bedside. And say yes to the volunteer.
Oh, I love that. I love that we also added that element of if you're lucky to get hospice in to be part of your journey with your loved ones, say yes to the volunteer. It will be probably a friend that you will know the rest of your life. And it just takes opening your heart and your mind and being fully present. And I think that's where Pam finds that creativity of that beautiful words when it comes to her book. And again, Gabby, I love that we're partnering and bringing these special people together. And I have to say, Lourdes, thank you for what you do. Emily, thank you for showing that even a young person can learn as well. Philip, I mean, what you've shared with me today, my teacher, is that to always see the positive side, even through hard times, and find ways to give back and open ourselves up. Wow. Pam, you've been a dear friend of mine for so long, and you just keep surprising me. And again, you're one of my dear teachers. Thanks for writing your book, and thank you for who you are in my life, but who you are at the bedside of so many people. Paul, I can't wait to get my signed book. I really suck at meditating, so I'm hoping that you can teach me some new ways. I look forward to it. I'll definitely be in touch. And
You
Craig,
absolutely can. It's
yeah,
not so.
thank you. And Craig, not only does it take special people to be volunteers, man, it takes a special person to assign these volunteers to those patients. Thank you for what you do. And I don't think there's any mystery in where we all have ended up. It's just we were awake enough to see our life calling us. And Craig, I think that's what I gathered from you. You were fully present and you saw your life calling you. And this is what you've created and the training that you've done. And Gabby, I just hope that we've accomplished, and I think we've accomplished way more than just two things, but hospice is a very unscary place. I have an expiration date somewhere on my body. I can't find it yet, but I know it's there. And I look forward to having people like each one of these guests at my bedside, hopefully when I die in hospice care. And also, if you are in hospice care, say yes to the volunteer. These are lovely people. And if you want to volunteer, please, like Craig said, look up your local hospice, get in touch with them. And I assure you, you will find and be gifted so much than you realize. Gabby, thank you for doing this with me. Our third episode. I can only guess what will be next for us down the road, because you've already said, hey, I have something else in my mind. But why don't you close us today, and I'll give you the last words with these wonderful people in the room.
I think I'd like to close this. Gosh, already the tears come. It's like you don't cry. I cry so easily. I'd like to focus on Craig for a second. There's been 2 times that I can remember where I was sitting with a patient who was all alone, and they had nobody. And I reached out to Craig and I said, I need your help. One was on Christmas Day about 4 years ago. He was alone, he was dying, and I knew it was Christmas Day, and I had 5 other patients I needed to see. And I said, Craig, I know it's Christmas Day, but is there any way you can get a volunteer to come and sit with this gentleman? He got like 6 volunteers, and they traded off about every 2 hours, and he did not die alone. And recently we had a gentleman who was COVID positive and didn't, he was in a room that was taped up with plastic, and I didn't want him to be alone. And Craig Paul sat with him, and Paul let him know he wasn't alone, and Paul reassured his daughter that he wouldn't leave him alone. And that's what volunteers do. And my heart goes out to all of you, and I am so filled with gratitude. Thank you.
You make me cry. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That was beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and sharing a piece of yourselves. And until the next time, we'll be back, Gabby and I, at the bedside, telling these really impactful stories with these amazing people. Until the next time. So, Gab, thanks for making me cry once again. And you know what? I have to just say, Gabby, you are an amazing hospice nurse, and what you just said and the passion that you have for people not dying alone. You were born to do this, kid. You were born to do this. So everyone, I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for showing up and sharing your stories. I look forward to the next time we're this really wonderful webinar at the bedside.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Hugs.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yay. Hey, before you guys go, I want to show, you probably can't see it. Can you see the snow?
Oh,
Probably not. I hate snow.
It's dumping.
It's wet, heavy snow. So we're 2 feet. It started snowing. It won't stop until Monday around 12. So, but Pam, you get a lot more than we do out in Vermont. I remember waking up in July in Vermont, and it was 45 degrees, and I had my winter coat on and my scarf and my hat, and people were running with like shorts and t-shirts because they thought it was summer for them. Hey, thanks, guys. This has been.
You're in Denver. You're going to have to get over it.
I know. And, Haven, my German Shepherd, absolutely loves it. She's like, oh my gosh, you did this for me. And to see it through her eyes is really special. Guys, I can't tell you how much I love this episode. You're amazing. I feel like I'm going to have one of the greatest days of my life after this. Thank you. And we'll let you know, we'll start promoting. We're going to get a flyer out to each one of you. Feel free to share it and whatever we can do to promote it. I don't know if we have a date, an air date. Gabby and I will discuss that, and then we'll let you guys know and keep you in the loop. But man, keep doing good work, my friends.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting
Good to see you all. Have a good weekend.
Absolutely.
I love meeting you all.
Ditto. I loved it too. It was amazing. Gab,
Thank you, my volunteers.
I know you're so lucky. Are you going to retire anytime soon? Maybe I need to move to California.
Not that I know of, unless.
I'm
And
just picking with you.
and Emily, you go, girl.
Yeah,
Good things await you.
yeah. Thank you, guys.
Emily, you're the youngest, but you have the biggest heart.
Emily and I are both ends of the spectrum.
That's right.
Bookends. Thank you,
Oh,
everybody.
thank you.
Yes, thank
Have
you.
a wonderful Saturday. Good to see
Namaste.
everyone.